Hi, and welcome to this edition of Fresh Hope for Mental Health. Our mission here at Fresh Hope for Mental Health is to empower you to live well in spite of your mental health challenge by sharing insights through interviews, practical tools for living well, encouragement, and courage for overcoming all from a Christian perspective. And now, here's your host, Pastor Brad Hafes.
Hello, and welcome, my friend, to this edition of Fresh Hope for Mental Health. I'm Pastor Brad Hafes, the founder and director of Fresh Hope for Mental Health. Our goal here at Fresh Hope is to empower you to live a faith-filled, rich, and meaningful life in spite of having a mental health diagnosis. So we're so glad that you joined us today. I have a friend. Now, I'm going to pretend like I don't know anything about her, but we did meet not long ago, and or over conversation not long ago, and her name is Katie Allred. Katie, thanks for being with me today.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. Katie, tell me about yourself, who you are. Tell me about your walk, your journey.
Yeah, so I originally grew up in Alabama, now live in Nashville, Tennessee. Got here because I was working at a megachurch in the area, worked there for 5 years, and then essentially burned out, which, that's its own thing, ministry burnout.
Yep.
And then from there, I started a company actually that worked with churches called Church Communications. And worked with, several thousand churches in a Facebook group, and then it grew. And that was acquired last year by a company. And I've been a professor. I've taught in a school of business. And then I've also just done a lot of random entrepreneur type jobs, but also worked at Meta for a couple of years overseeing faith partnerships there.
Great. You've done a lot of different things, it sounds like.
All the things. I wrote a book. I don't know.
You wrote a book. Tell me what the name of the book is.
Yeah, it's called Church Communications. So it's easy to find.
Yeah. And so you're really a specialist on churches and ministry and those kinds of things, right?
Yeah, well, that's the hope, at least.
Yeah. Well, tell me about your journey with the Lord, your personal walk and your personal things that you've walked through in life.
Sure. Yeah. I was fortunate enough to be raised in the church. I said in my graduation speech that people say it takes a village to raise a child, and I said it takes a church to raise a child. I was really lucky and fortunate to have grown up in a really great church family that really loved me and cared about me. I know a lot of people experience church hurt, but that was not necessarily my case. So that was good, I guess. And, I was discipled by my Sunday school teacher, Mr. John, who was just a wonderful man who saw that I had a lot of questions, and he asked me a lot of questions, and we just enjoyed that, that dialogue of back and forth of asking each other questions and kind of diving into scripture and figuring it out. From there, I answered the call to ministry, and that's how I got to the church I was working at and the church communications world. And that's kind of how it's been. I will say, me and God, we've developed a special relationship due to, I've gone through a lot of struggles myself. I lost my dad in 2008 to alcoholism. And that was really tough. I was only 18 at the time. And I think that really shaped a lot of my journey from there, because essentially it was just a couple months before I left and went to college. Just a couple weeks after I graduated high school. And, my parents were still married and they very much loved each other. So it wasn't, a situation where it was necessarily a relief. It was more just a really sad thing that my dad was depressed and couldn't seek help. And, I think we've learned since that like depression, anxiety, a lot of these things, trauma even can be inherited.
Right.
And so, I knew that I needed to look out for that in myself. I've never drank alcohol because of that, but also, I have been, depressed, been diagnosed with severe depression at one point, and anxiety, and I'm grateful that God has brought me through that.
Sure, absolutely. Tell me about how he brought you through it. How did you work through the recovery from having severe depression and anxiety?
I think the important thing is realizing that it's not a problem. It's just a part of life. It's a stage, a situation. It's a thing that you walk alongside. I
It didn't define you. You didn't let it
right,
define who you were
right,
or
and
are.
yeah. When that happened, it was really, I think it was really brought on from corporate burnout, which is totally different from ministry burnout.
Oh,
I,
yeah.
I experienced both at different times in my life at an early age. And that's because I'm, an Enneagram 3. So I like to run hard, and I'm an achiever by
Mm,
nature and just really want to get things done.
right.
Um, and that's good and bad for a lot of a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, so when I realized that I had been depressed. I had seen a lot of different counselors, and I think I just kept trying to see, which unfortunately is the truth. I kept seeing Christian counselors and being told, I should pray about it more, which, is terrible that that's the case.
Yeah.
When really I needed to be told that what I was feeling was valid, and it's okay for me to seek medication or
Yeah.
more than just talk therapy
Well, how did
necessarily.
that come about that you came to understand that you could love Jesus and have a therapist in medicine?
Yeah. Well, I think it was because I'd gotten to the point of suicidal ideation, unfortunately,
Yeah.
and realized that that wasn't me. You know,
Yep.
by nature, I'm not, a sad person, but like just could not function or get out of bed, or just like, I was just dealing with a lot at one time as
Sure.
well. Like, my mom was going through some medical issues, and I had just moved and was taking on a new job, and there was just a lot of things going on at work. And I think all of those transitions and things all happening at once just caused me to kind of crash,
Mm-hmm.
um, which was really unfortunate, and it really triggered in me like something has to change.
Sure. Well,
And so,
and thank God you realized that,
yeah,
and it didn't end a different way, but
right.
instead, yeah. And I would suppose that at that point, your faith or your foundation of what you had been taught and had as your foundation was the realization that something has to change and it can change, right?
Right. Yeah. I never questioned that God loved me and that He had a plan and a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Even for this, even for the suffering or whatever that I was going through, I just knew that I knew that like this wasn't the story that God was telling with my life.
Right, right.
That wasn't the ending for me. But it was hard to get the voice in my head to stop, and that's annoying.
Yeah,
Really,
exactly. Yeah,
frankly,
sure.
it's really just insane how that you know depression and those kind of things can lie to you and tell you all these things of like you're worthless, or
Mm-hmm.
you know, this is the only way, this is the only
Absolutely.
solution
Yep.
to your problems.
Mm-hmm.
And, I was doing a lot of those worrying cycles, or I don't know, things where I was just repeatedly thinking the same thing over and over again.
Ruminating.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
on similar things. I mean, I had no control over, or, weren't going to happen, but, I would come up with scenarios where it just wasn't the case.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so finding the right therapist is important.
Exactly.
I actually ended up going through a few before I found the right fit really for
Mm.
me. And it took like finding someone
How did you
who,
know it was the right therapist for you? Can you
uh,
give me one or two things that really stood out that you said, this is the right person?
yeah, I think they validated my feelings, and, just also, uh, I don't know, asked the right questions, I guess, for
Mm-hmm.
me,
Well, and
specifically.
you just probably felt a sincere connection with this person, with the therapist.
Right, right. And,
Yeah.
yeah, and she was just different, than the ones I had talked to in the past.
Right.
Also, she is funny. What I ended up finding was, like, actually, I said I didn't have any church hurt specifically, but that doesn't mean I didn't have religious trauma,
Right.
and she did a lot of religious trauma work. So I had to, like, unwind a lot of that theology as well in
Mm-hmm.
my learning, which I think anybody does,
Right.
when
Yes.
especially if they've been raised evangelical to believe about
Mm-hmm.
themselves. And so, unlearning that was really helpful, and then just working with someone that was okay with, talking about medication, and pointing me to the right resources and the
Yeah.
right people.
Right.
So I was really fortunate enough to have that.
Yeah. Now, I'm assuming at some point, once you started taking medicine, that it took a while, but it started to help your brain think differently or to get more
Right.
back to who you are. And
Yeah,
between that and the therapy, at some point, things began to turn around. Is that correct?
yeah, 100%. I mean, it takes a minute, and also, like, the right medication may not be the first thing you try.
Right.
I think that's really important to realize. But for me, thankfully, I got on one and increased the dosage, and it really worked out for me. And I um, eventually decreased it, but and was good for a while, and then, ended up getting a lot more stress again in my life, which happens, to
Yes.
anybody, and I had to increase the dosage because I started hearing that same voice again, and I was like, this is stupid.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
um and it's
Yep.
annoying, to me. I realized, like, like, this is just not who I am, right?
Right.
Like, it's just not.
Well, and you
uh
almost have to, the minute you hear those sorts of things again, you got to nip it in the bud fast, or
right.
it's really easy to go down that dark hole again.
Right. Yeah. And ruminate. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And just
Yeah.
think about, like, well, this must be the truth about who I am because
Yeah.
I'm thinking this way.
And
But
you start believing the lies again. And
right.
yeah.
Thankfully, though, I've taught myself, not to believe those things, but it
Right.
does take some time.
Yeah. So, tell me what you tell yourself today, or what you know. Like five important things, or some important things that you've learned about yourself, that you've learned about your, taking control of your thinking and that kind of stuff. Can you give me some clues that might be helpful to our listeners? Um, you know,
Yeah. Um. For me, there was that thought of, when I need somebody when I'm going through depression or whatever, anxiety,
Mm-hmm.
when I'm having like an episode or something like that, I really need to talk to someone. But I know not everybody needs that. So like there's like
Mm-hmm.
what you can talk with someone, sit with someone,
Right.
what do you need space, like all those things.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I really need to like just talk it through with
Sure.
someone,
Sure.
and not keep it internal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or else I
Exactly.
will continue to go down a spiral, which is not helpful to me at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah.
But that takes me being honest
Mm-hmm.
about what I'm dealing with. So that's, an issue all in and of itself.
Mm-hmm.
Which is probably the second thing is honesty, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
being honest with yourself and then being
Ah,
honest with
that's a
others.
big one, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
I think there's times we tell ourselves, "Oh, I can deal with this. I don't. This is not going to become a deal." you know, and the lie is that it's not going to become a deal if I don't. I can just do it in my own little silo over here, and we start believing that, or not the lack of reaching out by believing that I could take care of it myself sometimes is a
Hmm.
lie to ourselves.
Hmm. Yeah, and that God cares about the whole self.
Right?
It's not just mental health isn't separate from my faith. It's a part of the
Mm-hmm.
wholeness that God desires for me.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Um, it's not just a single part of it. I think the thing that made me realize it was okay for me to take medication was that um, I took medicine for my allergies my entire life.
Yeah.
I'm very much allergic to like nature. And I was like, if God made me like this and I take this medication to fix that problem,
Mm-hmm.
then who's to say that, there isn't a chemical imbalance in my head that's making me feel this way instead of like,
Exactly.
faith doesn't necessarily cancel out your mental health struggles.
Right. Right. No more than it cancels out any other physical struggles
Hmm.
that we have. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well,
And then, finally, I think the last thing I've really learned is like rest is not laziness. Um, it's obedience itself, you
oh,
know.
yeah. Yeah.
Uh, rest isn't optional. I think I have constantly been an achiever, right? Like going
Right.
after the next thing and going after
Mm-hmm.
the next thing. But it's been nice to figure out how to protect my mental health by slowing down.
Yeah. Which leads me to the question of what are you doing these days? What kind of work are you doing these days after kind of going through this and learning so much? What are you doing?
Yeah, so I'm working for the company that I was acquired by, Missional Marketing. So working with churches still, doing communication work. Um, just really grateful that I found a space that lets me be me and doesn't, expect something different, I guess.
Uh-huh.
Uh, but that's been really helpful. So I'm still in that space, but it's definitely serving in a different capacity, which is nice.
Oh, cool. Cool. What would you say to somebody listening today that may be going through some of the same things that you've gone through, and what would you say to them?
Yeah. Mental health challenges don't always have quick fixes.
Mm,
Uh, my faith doesn't or didn't erase the process, but it anchored me.
mm,
Um, and, I think God can continue to bring redemption even through pain.
yeah, yeah. I love what you just said that your faith didn't erase it, but anchored you. That's very that's very important. It's very and it's a I think many times we have gotten confused and thought that our faith should fix this as opposed to
Hmm.
anchoring us through a difficulty. Somehow
Hmm.
we've gotten that idea that we shouldn't have any difficulties if we're following Jesus, or they should be minimized. but they really are storms, right? And the anchor holds you through all that. I love that word picture. That's a fantastic way to say it.
Yeah, thank you.
Is there any other thing that you'd like to say to those who are listening today?
Yeah, well, prayer is powerful, but so is therapy.
So. That's a great way to put it. I'm going to have to re-listen to this just to write those few things down because, prayer's powerful, but so is therapy. Yeah.
Yeah, God can use both prayer and professional care in your healing journey for sure.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Would you mind, Katie, praying for our listener today, our listeners?
Yeah, I can do that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Lord, you're the one who formed us, body, mind, and spirit, and you see the weight that we carry, the anxiousness and the weariness, the things that we often cannot put into words. And I thank you that my struggles don't scare you and that my worth isn't measured by my strength, but by your love.
Yep.
So continue to remind us that rest is holy and that help isn't weakness and that healing is a journey that you walk with us. And all these things. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you. I could tell you specialize in communication as you just have very clear ways of saying things. Thank you for that. That's fantastic. And thank you for being with me. Those of you who are listening today, I hope that you heard what Katie was saying. And there is beauty in the middle of the mess. And God doesn't leave us. He doesn't forsake us. He anchors us and holds us strong through it. And I want to thank you for listening. Please know that you can check out a whole bunch of free resources that we have and groups that we have that you can meet with even online or in person. Just go to freshhope.us. And of course, you can find us in all the social media places, etc. If this podcast has been helpful to you, please pass it along to others or those that you know it might be helpful for. And we just are glad that you took time to listen today. If you'd like to know more about Katie's story or know more about Fresh Hope, or you have some ideas for the podcast, you can contact me at Pastor Brad at freshhope.us, Pastor Brad at freshhope.us. I promise you, I read all of them sooner or later, and I will get back to you sooner or later. This has been another edition of Fresh Hope for Mental Health, and I'm Brad Hafes, your host. Thank you for listening, and may He fill you with His hope daily.
You've been listening to Fresh Hope for Mental Health. If you have an opportunity, please review, share, and subscribe to the Fresh Hope for Mental Health podcast on iTunes or on the service that you use. We encourage you to share our podcast on social media with your friends and family. Previous podcasts of Fresh Hope for Mental Health can be found at freshhopeformentalhealth.com, iHeartRadio, Stitcher Radio, and iTunes. Fresh Hope is one of the leading networks of faith-based peer support groups internationally. For more information about Fresh Hope, go to freshhope.us.